Ooh, we are live, ladies and gents. This is WeatherBrains episode number 534 for April 11th, 2016. It's the pre-show, the magical time of this program, where we occasionally share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, we say outrageous things. So here we are to do just that. I've never seen Nate join us so early.
He's excited.
He's excited?
Yeah. I don't know
He's never
why.
excited.
Nate's always excited. We're getting his test pattern, though.
Yeah, coming in loud and clear. So, yeah, that's cool. Can one of our Skycams see the Region Center? What is the Region Center? Is that big building downtown that says Regions?
Yeah. What's wrong with it?
I don't know.
Is it on fire or something?
I don't think so. I think Twitter would be illuminated if that was the case.
By the way, James, you got the praise of the Helena City Council this evening.
Why? Did I drive safely out of the city on the way out?
For bringing the storm spotter training to the city of Helena.
Well, you did that, not me. I had nothing to do with it.
They were all over you.
Oh.
Great.
Once again, James gets all the credit and you do all the work.
Yes, I like that. Brian does all the work and they thank me.
That's all right. I still am in awe that we had, how many people we had on
Saturday morning? Oh my gosh, that was crazy.
It's amazing.
That was a huge crowd for a sunny Saturday, a spring day with all the spring sports. I mean, that's
against the Auburn A-Day game and everything.
Totally crazy.
Wow. And what about that hail out in Texas?
Oh my goodness!
I've never seen hail.
Tony Lawback's video. That was crazy.
I'm not sure. I was one of the videos that was really interesting was seeing their car window shatter.
Yeah, I think that was the same one.
Did you see those houses in Wiley, Texas?
Yes. Wow. I mean, that one house has got no windows.
I mean,
I need to invite Eric, don't I?
These are like nice looking houses there, and that's bad, man. Goodness gracious! And you can still see hail out there in the front yard.
Yeah, yeah, and that one of the back car window breaking was fabulous. I mean, the damage occurring right there in front of you. Wow.
Yeah, but that's bad stuff when you see it. That's just not good.
No. And then it was pouring rain on top of that, so the car is going to be a real mess on the inside.
So we got Rick on here.
Remember me? I used to be on here a long time ago.
No more caps. All caps. That's breaking news.
There's a lot of excitement about that. I'm kind of, I don't know. I guess it's a big deal.
I think it's a big deal. I can't believe it only took 12 years after I retired for it to happen.
I think it's just going to be harder to type now. I mean, we're going to have to actually use the shift key and use commas, and I mean.
You can do it. You're professional.
Yeah, I think we can. We'll see.
Everybody is waiting on us to talk about it tonight.
Yeah, somebody just tweeted about it.
So is this the official edict come down?
Yeah, I think well, I don't want to steal Nate's pick of the week thunder, but they put out a release today that says starting sometime in May, they're switching over to AFD and PNS and one other product, and then they're going to phase in everything else. Warnings will start in the summer, and I forget, by some deadline, everything will be mixed case. So,
wow, that's great.
Yep.
I'm very happy because I was pulling for that for like the last 20 years of my career.
Yeah, it is kind of hard to explain.
Yeah.
But it's good.
The last vestiges of teletype.
Exactly.
And the cool thing, I guess, we will now be able to actually use all caps for emphasis. You know, we can.
Right.
Right.
That's a good point.
So we can say tornado emergency in all capitals.
Get in your safe place now!
With 6 exclamation points. I don't know what punctuation will be legal now. I guess we can use punctuation too, but haven't heard about that specifically.
And you can punch people out if you want to.
Can you use emoticons?
Maybe that's next.
That may be pushing it, Bill.
I thought so.
One of our local TV Mets here has done full emoticon forecast, with nothing but emoticons, and I could see where some people would that would speak to them.
I saw somebody post some sort of Twitter comment with emoticons in it, and they had a tornado image.
Ooh.
I didn't know that was available.
Yeah, there is a tornado on the on iOS. There is a tornado.
Oh, is there? Okay, I just hadn't seen it.
No, it's an emoji. It's not an emoticon. It's an emoji.
Oh, okay.
There's a difference.
What's the difference? Is there a difference?
Emoticon is what you do, like when you hit the semicolon and the closed parentheses to make a winky smiley face.
Uh-huh.
That's using, I think that's right. That's using punctuation marks on a keyboard to do it. Emoji are the actual little pictures.
Okay.
So I don't want to get yelled at.
You could make a tornado emoticon, I guess, with the two symbols to the right of the P.
Yeah, that's true.
Probably
Where is
if you put a space in between, it's a wedge emoticon. So.
Yeah.
Now we're splitting hairs there, Rick.
All right, I hope Eric Blake joins us. We had a great test. He handled it really well. I invited him. Did you invite him, James?
No.
I sent him an invite. If you wouldn't mind, you hit him with one too.
So it says it's going to have a golfer lit up on it.
A golfer?
That's the building where they do the Christmas wreath in the stocking, right?
Oh yeah, right.
So there's going to be a golfer. I mean, what's the point?
A gopher?
A golfer. A guy who swings clubs.
Gophers? Nobody remembers Caddyshack.
Yes, I do.
That was before the time of Ron Burgundy.
No, that was funny.
I need Eric Blake. Come on, Eric Blake. It's going to be a good show tonight.
So I just invited him, but he probably saw the pre-show and he opted out. He said, "No way."
Yeah, probably pretty smart. Well, now that we got Rick here, we gotta have a good guest for him.
I'm just glad to be back.
We can make Rick we can interview Rick if Eric doesn't show.
He just emailed me. Let me see what he said.
It'll be a short show.
I hit the link, but nothing seems to happen. No, let's try it again. Okay.
So he got it, but he didn't get it, huh?
That's what he said. Okay. All right, let me reply to him again.
Man, Brian was a chick magnet at the Storm Spotter classes the other day.
Oh, yeah.
All the babes just wanted their picture made with him, and they just wanted to touch him and rub on him and love on him.
I watched a little of that video today. It looked like it was a pretty well-attended event.
It was huge.
Yeah, we were shocked at how many people showed. I mean, it was huge. Just a big crowd.
I'm approaching an inch and a half of rain, James.
Wow.
Now, we're not going to change the subject because I want to talk about the ladies that wanted to love on you at the Storm Spotter thing. See, Brian is trying to change the subject.
I'd rather talk about the weather, thank you.
No, so in fact, a couple, they got married Friday night, and they spent their first day on their honeymoon at the Storm Spotter classes.
Yes.
That was different.
Well, this horse
Yeah, but you didn't hear the whole story, James.
I remember the lady had like a her arm was in a sling or something.
Yeah. Well, she told me that they knew they had to get up early, so they forgave the standard honeymoon activities.
No.
And it was like This is too much information.
This show is going right down the tubes right as we go on television.
I mean, it was only like 3 weeks ago. I had the youngest storm spotter, a Rick. You want to guess how old the storm spotter was that came to my training in Tuscaloosa?
Did you say the youngest storm spotter?
Yeah, youngest storm spotter ever to attend my training, as far as I know.
Oh gosh, you've done it a long time. How it could be? Were they less than one?
Oh yes, 6 weeks.
6
Oh,
weeks.
my goodness.
Wow.
That's
Starting them early.
Let's welcome our television viewers. This is the WeatherBrains pre-show, the magical part of the show where we just ramble and say silly things, and we start the show here in a matter of minutes. What's shocking, I think, for the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've actually started the show on time, which just never happens here. So once we get our guest on, we'll go ahead and start. And sometimes we'll even start without them because they will typically join along the way. So we can do that. So we're missing Kevin. Is they still got weather in Wichita Falls?
No, his wife's birthday's tonight.
Oh, that's right. He sent a note, said he's out.
And gave us a reason.
Weather, but
He didn't just say, I'm out. He gave us a reason.
So did Kevin not work the severe weather out there today? Was he working today?
I don't know. I wasn't in the office this afternoon, so I don't know for sure. I know he worked it last night because he was on. I saw him in chat, but I don't know about today.
He was doing a lot of tweeting. I know that.
Yeah. Well, I guess one of those storms started just east of Wichita Falls and headed down toward the Metroplex.
I sent him a Tracky nomination. I found this. I tune around during severe weather, and happen to have it on a station in Shreveport. I see the notice the logo behind that guy sitting down. What does it say?
Something track
storms.
That's commitment.
So,
They got a logo.
So it's got it on the wall. So what do you do like on a sunny day? I mean, it's still
we track sunshine.
We track storms.
Well, there's always more storms coming, so there's always storms to track.
Okay, and then up there in the top bar it says Storm Tracker 12, and I think those two guys between them, the two of those guys said the word tracker tracking probably 3 dozen times. So. That was just my nomination. You know, we have this cool intro now. I mean, did you guys hear that audio? This is good.
Now, WeatherBrains is tracking the tracker.
This is good, man.
That's great.
This is good. So Kevin's not here to do the tracking thing. Maybe I'll do it in his place because it drives me crazy. Like it drives him crazy.
Well, that was a double whammy there because that was in a weather alert day too.
Oh,
yeah.
So I guess let's just roll it. I mean, if Eric makes it, Eric makes
Yeah, he just texted James. He's restarting his computer. He says it's not acting right.
Oh, all right. Well, here we go. Stand by. Get these recorders rocking and rolling.
Camera 12 on standby.
Yes.
Eric just popped in.
We are recording, and here we go.
There he is.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time to talk weather. This is WeatherBrains, episode number 534, the weekly show that's all about weather. This is for April 11th, 2016, the time of the year where there is never a dull moment in somebody's weather office across the country. A little active where we are tonight. Anyway, thanks for joining us. I got a fun show tonight. Got a few absences. Aubrey is out. So we are going to have a triple email segment next week. And Kevin actually sent us an excuse. You know, Kevin typically when he's not here, he just says, I'm out. But he said, what was his excuse?
His wife's birthday. His wife's birthday.
Wife's birthday. Well, that we'll take that. But I think everybody else is here, including Brian Peters. We often call Brian the internationally beloved meteorologist.
And I don't know why.
Well, I know why. so we had a big spotter training this past weekend and had a huge crowd. Just hundreds were there. I mean, this was massive. And all the ladies just loved on Brian. They just wanted to rub him and pet him. And, ooh, they love Brian. So Brian at these storm spotter classes is a chick magnet.
Yeah, right.
So,
but we did have a first, James. We had a first. I've never had somebody spend their honeymoon at a storm spotter training session.
wow.
Yes.
We're here to spice up the marriage with our slides of the rear flank downdraft. I'm not going to go down. I'm not going to go down that rat hole because that's a bad rat hole.
Maintain our PG rating there, James.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
We're not going to go there. So no, but you got to admit, Brian. I mean, you think about we've done what 5 of these things, and then we did the big one on a Saturday, and everyone had a great crowd. That's very encouraging to me to see so many people want to get training, which is great.
It is encouraging, and especially this one, because Saturday was a gorgeous, an absolutely gorgeous day across all of Alabama. We had some reasons for people not to be there, and yet we had about 450 people, and they came back for the afternoon session. That was amazing.
They really did. I mean, it was just as crowded for the afternoon session, and for those that would like to see it, we had a fixed camera pointed up at the screen so you could see the graphics rolling the whole time, and we posted those up on YouTube today. In fact, I probably ought to make that a pick of the week or something. I'll make it the pick of the week next week. But,
and I would encourage people, if they want to see James Spann getting really, and I mean not just a little, I mean really cranky, you need to watch that segment.
Yeah, I don't know what was up with me. I was, I'm usually a little cranky, but I was like really cranky.
I couldn't have cranked you up better if I'd had a crank.
So anyway, those are online if you want to watch. But we want to thank the Sue of the Weather Service office where we are in Birmingham, Kevin Laws. He's been on this show before. He came out to join us and spoke and did a great job. And Brian had the basic and the advanced sessions, and it was a really good day. And we had a Song of the Night meetup. And most people on this show don't know what that is. We do a little feature during our 10 o'clock news called Song of the Night, where we go on Periscope or Facebook and we play a song and we talk about it. Every week we have a theme, like this week's theme, Old School Country Week, since Merle Haggard died last week. You have to watch it for like a few weeks to get it, but we had a big meet-up for the Song of the Night guys, and it was just a fun day, so that was good. Dr. John Scala is joining us. Dr. J, what's happening in Lancaster?
You guys are quite entertaining tonight. I've just been sitting back and listening to this and wondering where it's going.
Down the tubes eventually.
Yeah, but down the tubes is the right answer, exactly. And that might be our show title.
Down the tubes. Well, last Saturday we had, for the second time in about a week, the air at the mid-levels of the atmosphere was near record cold. So that swooped in on Saturday. I measured 2.2 inches of snow at my house. We had 1/4 mile S+ on April the 9th.
Just rub it in, John. Thanks.
I don't want it. I've got fruit trees out back that don't want it either.
I've got fruit trees out back. I don't. Send some of that down our way. Stop complaining about it. Jeez, give a guy a PhD and a couple of fruit trees, and all of a sudden he's like, I don't like snow.
Nate Johnson is Mr. Cranky Pants this week. Having a bad day.
Taking up for Kevin tonight.
I'm having a great day, actually. Pretty good. Although Saturday I was at I worked the NC State University K-Yow spring football game. Not as well attended as Alabama's spring game, but fun nonetheless.
More than Brian's storm chaser spotting thing that he did.
We had a pretty good crowd actually. I was impressed. I'd never been to a spring game before, and I got to tell you, it was windy. We had wind gusts of 40, 45 miles per hour in the area. The light standards at the Carter Finley Stadium were swaying back and forth. The sports staff there at State had never seen it sway like that before, and really looking at me like it was my fault. I'm like, no, I just work here. I'm in sales, not management.
Marketing, not management. Rick Smith is the warning coordination meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma, where looks like the storm's kind of scooted south of you today, huh?
Yeah, you guys are talking about sales and management. I always say prediction, not production. So
Exactly. That's good.
That's
unless
good.
you like it, and then we take credit. Yeah, we missed out on those storms today. I guess there was a outflow boundary or something that kind of sagged down south of the Red River and set up. And man, if the hailstorm down in the Metroplex or just north of there, I think one county further south, if that supercell had tracked like 20 miles further south. Can you imagine at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? So,
Oh, yes.
I'm not sad that we
People
missed
would have
out on
not
that.
been driving north.
They would not have been driving any direction because they wouldn't have been able to see out their windshield. But we had some severe weather last night. We had some crazy, bow echo and some supercells and some tennis ball size hail, and it was a long night last night. But enjoying the quiet before we get another shot this weekend. It looks like.
Yeah, for those watching, here's a shot of some of the hail damage. This is from Wiley, Texas, and that's just not good. I mean,
the reports out of Wiley are 4 1/4 inch softball size hail.
That doesn't happen very often, and you get some gusty winds, and that's just, boy, I would not want to be in the insurance business out there.
Yeah, I think the ironic picture was that picture of a Geico car that was battered into a million pieces. Flo's going to be getting a call.
Yeah, well, we'll talk more about the weather situation later. But anyway, Brian, did you hang up on us? You came back. I thought you left early or something.
I clicked on something and the video went away. So to get it back, I had to sign out and come back.
Yeah, right. You hung up on us. Now, all right. Well, Bill Murray is here, and Bill, I can't believe it. You hurt our feelings last week. We were hurt.
You hurt my feelings. You were talking bad about me. I heard you.
Yeah, no, you deserve it because instead of
I
being
do
on this
not.
show,
What are you talking about?
being on this show, you watch some stinking basketball game.
Oh yeah, only the best college basketball game in the history of the planet.
There are still hearts in this part of the country that are
I
bleeding.
know.
Oh my God.
I had a 12-year-old in tears. He was so upset North Carolina lost.
When Marcus Page hit that acrobatic shot to tie it with 4:7 left, I was thinking, all right, there's a chance we go to overtime, but 4.7 seconds against the team in the national championship is entirely too long.
Supernova.
Oh, man.
So anyway.
All right, well, Bill, bring in our guest before he hangs up on us.
Yeah, he probably already has, James. Tonight's guest WeatherBrain is a hurricane specialist at the National Hurricane Center in Miami. Eric Blake, welcome to the show.
Good evening.
We're glad we got you on board. Thanks for sticking it out, rebooting your computer, and figuring out this Google thing with us, Eric.
Yeah, no problem. Enjoy it.
So, Eric, it's a real thrill to have you on the show tonight. We always love having people from the Hurricane Center, and we thank you for joining us. But, take us for a quick minute down memory lane. How'd you get interested in weather?
I've been interested in weather all my life. I really think that, really, as long as I can remember. I mean, the 1985 hurricane season probably nailed it. I grew up in southeast Louisiana, and we had hurricane after hurricane come, and that, that just fueled the passion. And I remember tracking, other people were tracking. I was tracking hurricanes while other people were tracking girls. So that's just how it was.
And he's allowed to say tracking. Unlike everybody else, the Weather Service and the Hurricane Center has been tracking. That's an acceptable use of the term.
And Kevin's not here, so we don't have. I'll give out a track award later tonight. We got a great intro that somebody sent in. But anyway, go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry. The tracking thing is getting good. Yeah.
So you grew up in southeast Louisiana, Eric? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I grew up in Metairie and moved to the North Shore when I was in middle school.
So what were some of the famous hurricanes you went through in your day?
I actually have gone through a whole lot of hurricanes. I mean, I was on the fringe of Andrew when it came in. Hurricane Juan was probably my most memorable in southeast Louisiana. Some memorable misses. Aaron, in '95, expecting to come straight up Lake Pontchartrain and then have it veer off to the right. I mean, my most interesting here was probably in Katrina in 2005, but in southeast Florida.
You have one of the best jobs in the world, at least in a lot of weather people's minds. So talk about your career track, how it unfolded, and how you got to the seat you're in now.
Well, I went to grad school at Colorado State and under Bill Gray, and Bill recommended me to Max Mayfield as the previous intern had left, and he recommended me, and I got the job right out of grad school, and I've been there better part of 15 years now.
That's incredible. I just love Max Mayfield. He's a great guy. What was it like to work for him? back in the day?
Max is great. I mean, he has brings a passion to the job. I miss that passion sometimes. Max is be your best friend and then he'd chew you out, but that's Max. He really he set a high standard.
Yeah, I know how that goes. He's been a good friend to us. I got to spend the day with him in New Orleans when he was on the Gulf Coast Hurricane Tour one year, and with he and Stacy Stewart in probably, I don't know, 2000 maybe 2001. And what an experience that was, just to spend the day with those two and shadow them, and then get to have dinner with them in New Orleans. It was phenomenal.
That sounds great.
So what was it like to study under Bill Gray? I mean, that's another luminary right there.
Yeah, Bill, he's a character. I mean, he brings all sorts of passion to the job, and he's every Friday he wanted me to tell him something good before the weekend, and he really was really interested in what we were doing as grad students, and I owe a lot to Bill Gray. He kind of showed me the path and got me going.
So now you specialize in medium to long range forecasting, Eric. Is that an offshoot of what you learned under him, or just a passion that you developed?
Partially. I mean, Bill was more seasonal in nature. I mean, I've had a passion for forecasting really at all ranges, but I enjoy, it's kind of gone farther and farther out in time as the field's kind of progressing. The one-day forecast isn't quite like it used to be, so now we're kind of pushing it and trying to push the boundaries into the week 1 and week 2 type forecasts, especially hurricanes and tropical cyclogenesis.
So when you separate those time frames, when you talk about the difference between short, medium, and long, what sort of time scales are you talking about, Eric? Generally, in your definition.
Medium range to me is 3 to 7 days, and then anything beyond that's long range, and it kind of really depends on what the background conditions are. Sometimes you'll have some skill out in week 2, and you'll see it coming. You'll see these big weather features coming, and then other times you're in deep trouble because there's no strong signal, and it's a really uncertain pattern. You just try to get what you can out of the atmosphere.
So now, do you get involved in the seasonal forecasts that NOAA puts out?
I do. I'm part of there's a few of us here at the Hurricane Center. There's some people up in Washington, D.C., and we'll get together in a few weeks here to discuss the seasonal hurricane forecast. It's like an interesting year. It doesn't. Last couple of years, there wasn't really a whole lot of debate. It seemed much more like a slam dunk, probably below average, 14 and 15. But this year, it's certainly more interesting.
So is that a little hint to what your input might be to the seasonal forecast, Eric?
Well, I mean, at this range, so many things can change, but almost anyone would think that the El Nino is going away, so we're going to have a neutral or La Nina conditions. That would generally enhance the season. But the Atlantic Ocean is not in the favorable configuration that we saw most of the late 90s and early 2000s. And how those two factors combine is really anyone's guess. And that'll be the forecasting challenge for this forecast.
Now,
Eric, do you mean in terms of deep ocean heat content, or do you mean just in sea surface temperatures?
Well, the Atlantic is warm overall, but the overall pattern of variability, far North Atlantic, is quite cool, and they have that characteristic ring. In the Eastern Atlantic and Tropical Atlantic is not as warm, relatively speaking, as the subtropical Atlantic. Historically, that's not the best configuration for a particularly active season. It reminds me more of the early 90s than, say, 5-10 years ago. Trying to get all the signals out of this is not easy, because if you look at, year after a big El Nino, in 83 or 98, usually the tropical Atlantic's actually a lot warmer because of the atmospheric bridge weakening and the NAO generally turning negative, but that didn't happen this winter. So we're stuck with that cool Atlantic relative to what one would expect. And how that plays out, we'll see.
So Eric, I guess you were actively involved in the development of the longer range tropical weather outlook product.
I was. Me and a team of people at the Hurricane Center, we were doing the 2-day outlooks for forever, really. And then we started to look at the guidance and think, okay, we can make this out to 5 days, and then we started doing it in-house, putting the probabilities and verifying it and drawing the areas. That was quite a project, and that went operational a couple of years ago. That certainly was a big advance. I know in-house maybe we'll start doing 6 and 7 day in-house Genesis forecasts in a year or two. My colleagues probably bristle at the thought because it's a really challenging thing to do. But the models are getting better and better, and I think we're understanding some of the long-range signals better than we did 10, 15 years ago.
So talk for a minute, Eric, about the rules and challenges that new product sort of created. I understand that it created a couple of issues here and there over, wording and logistics and et cetera.
Yeah, it's how you merge a 2-day forecast with a 5-day forecast, how you go from really specifics of, okay, we think it's going to form here at this specific time frame, and then going to a 5-day forecast and kind of really bring that into a public product. It's not always an easy thing for a scientist to do, but I think the graphical product really helps in showing the likely genesis area. You can roughly think of it as a track forecast, and that rule really, I think, has been a good addition to the National Hurricane Center toolbox for helping people understand.
So Eric, how long will it be before we actually see actual watches and warnings issued prior to the development of a tropical cyclone?
Well, we're shooting for next year. We've got the in-house development working, and we think we'll be able to do it next year. There's a lot of things that tend to get pushed back, but we're some of the early signs are really good, so I think we'll be able to do it. But we'll know more in the next off season if everything fell into place.
So in keeping with that line of thought, talk about some of the new products that will be operational or experimental this year. What can we look for out here coming out of the Hurricane Center?
Well, we have a lot of the same things we did in previous years. We're still going to do the experimental potential storm surge warning, practicing it. The storm surge map will be operational, so that will be something that people can look at in the case of a U.S. landfalling situation. Those are the two big ones. We're still doing a lot of behind-the-scenes testing of the in-house 6 and 7 day track and intensity forecast, but all that's in-house. We're trying to verify that for eventual production over the next several years. That's a very difficult thing because Erica last year especially highlighted the challenges we have of long-range track and intensity forecasts, and figuring out the best format for that to go in isn't easy. So that's one of the big challenges with the 6 and 7 day forecast.
So the 2015 verification statistics were out earlier this year. Talk about those, Eric. What came from that report this year? One of the big things I noticed in that report was over the past 3 years, our best individual model that wasn't a consensus model for intensity was actually the HWRF through 72 hours, and that's really to me it's a landmark because the GFDL in all its years never was able to beat the statistical the SHIPS and the LGIM models. So we're kind of moving in the era that the intensity forecasts are beginning to be skillful. It reminds me of kind of previewing my AMS talk next week in San Juan a little bit. But it's exciting to think that we're actually starting to get some intensity skill. It's not a lot. It's not like track forecast now. It's comparable, I think, to track forecast in the early 1990s, but we're just starting to scratch the surface. And it's exciting to see how much more progress we're going to make over the next several years. So why do you think it is so difficult to forecast intensity, Eric? And and where are those improvements going to come from?
Well, it's difficult to forecast intensity because it's a scale. Track is a much larger scale problem. It's analogous to the cork and the stream. If you can get the large scale flow, you're going to understand a lot of what's going on in the track forecast. But intensity forecast, you have to know what's going on in the inner core, in the inner few kilometers, not exactly a data-rich area. Plus, you have to know, let's say you know what's going on in the inner core, You have to have the right model to ingest all that data and really get the tropical cyclone structure right. You can't get that structure correctly because nowadays some of the hurricane models, they still want to spin up a hurricane like it wants to do and not use the data well enough. So we still have to get the data assimilation techniques properly assimilated. And then you've got the large-scale problem, the conditions of moisture, where is the storm exactly going to be, what's the environment going to be. We're getting better and better with the environmental forecasts. That's partially due to getting the track forecast better. So it's really an integration of all those things. I mean, we still have some basic research to understand. We're starting to get lower and lower and higher resolution with the hurricane models. And so I'm kind of excited to see exactly what happens if we can actually get all these hurricane models, the HORF, to kind of take that next step to be able to forecast the rapid intensification and get it coupled to the ocean to get those really tricky situations. We're getting there piece by piece, but it's a slow process.
Eric, I want to ask you a quick question about Hurricane Joaquin, and we're talking about track forecasting, and at one point the guidance was essentially split, with some guidance taking it to the west, other guidance taking it to the east, and the official forecast basically split the difference and had it headed toward a place where we pretty much all agreed it was never going to go. If you had taken at one point the Hurricane Center forecast, literally it would have had New York City in like day 6. What's the solution to that? I mean, are we? I understand. Can you explain why we got to that point? Because I think there's a very conscious philosophical decision and approach to why the forecast, was going to wind up in that way. But are we ever going to get past that?
That's a really interesting question. We've had a lot of debates about Joaquin and what was the right thing to do. It's hard. I mean, there was a very specific forecast I can remember where every single major model was actually taking to the United States except for the European suite. And exactly what to do, the safest course of action is to certainly show a solution that respects both. And it's easy to say after the fact that we knew it was either going to do this or this. But the research is a little nebulous on whether the double solution, the west or the east, that might have been the likeliest. But I've often seen times where you'll get a bifurcation, you'll still end up in the middle. Joaquin is a really tricky situation. We're doing some things in-house. We're working on a smarter cone that takes into account situational uncertainties with model spread, so that in certain situations we'll have a bigger or smaller cone depending on several situations. But yeah, the Joaquin, that's a really difficult thing to know what to do with.
Eric, I wanted to ask about the potential for using autonomous aircraft to get a better understanding of what's happening in the core of these systems. So what do you think the future is for that?
Well, right now it's still hard for getting those drones into the inner core. It's such a tumultuous place. Yeah. Actually piloting those in is really difficult. I'm kind of excited right now of drones for the possibility of remote data. Right now I've seen some data from the NASA Global Hawk. The idea of a 24-hour mission. Now, right now the drones fly very slowly, but they have the ability to stay up for a whole day. The idea of the tropics, such a data-sparse region. Right now they can drop about 80 drop zones. So the idea of kind of painting an area you're interested in, I can really visualize a time where the models are showing this potential area, let's say a week out, and we can look at sensitivity studies and think, okay, it would really help if we got more data in this particular location. and we can go out and drop. Let's say we had three drops, three global hawks, and so we can drop 240 SONs over a large area of the Atlantic Ocean at kind of a fraction of the cost it would cost now. So the idea of having all this data and integrating it into the global models, and by that time we're probably going to have 5-kilometer global models that can handle that kind of resolution, all the 4D VAR. I think that's really an exciting thing in the environment. They're really still working out the inner core. Right now I still think that the human penetrations are going to be really important for the inner core. And I haven't seen anything quite yet that the drones can get in through the eyewall smartly.
So Eric, you talked about a tricky situation there with Joaquin. Talk about Sandy for a minute, because you were part of the writing of the final report. Talk about that situation. Share some of the inside baseball on Sandy.
Yeah, Sandy. I wrote the tropical cyclone report on Sandy, and I was working with Stacy Stewart when it made landfall in Cuba, and that was a difficult situation. In the forecast, exactly what Sandy was north of the Bahamas. It's still this hybrid system that interacted with the upper trough. We've seen systems like that, but never really quite so close to the coast. And just the other day I was looking at Sandy, looking at satellite pictures, and thinking, man, that really could have been subtropical for a while over the Atlantic. When subtropical systems pop eyes, I don't generally like to call them subtropical after that. But it really was lopsided after a while. And Sandy was just a really tough situation, and it's it's hard to believe it was 4 years ago now, but at the time you're seeing all these models, these pressures in the 930s and 940s near there. It's like, can that really happen? I mean, you could see it, and to have it actually come true was certainly surreal.
And on that same type talk, you're part of the reanalysis project and going back and looking at historic hurricanes. Talk about that process for a few minutes and share with us, what you guys are doing and how that's changing as you move forward in time.
Well, Chris Lancey and his team at the Hurricane, Chris Lancey is the science and operations officer, and he's had grad students and people work with him. He's gone back to 1851 and looked at all the available hurricane data that's out there over the Atlantic Basin. And he submitted year after year all this data to try to get the best possible analysis of the historical hurricanes. And we try to update the best tracks with the modern techniques of analyzing data. Over the past couple of years, we've finally gotten into the age of aircraft reconnaissance. Right now it's just working on 1961. And in that era, in early in the 50s, a lot of times you'd have hurricane hunters, but after the hurricane got to be so strong, the hurricane hunters wouldn't actually really fly into it in that time. They would just take radar fixes. So you knew where it was, you didn't exactly know how strong it was. And now that we're in the era of the 60s, most of the time they did penetrate. And knowing exactly what to do with that data, back in 1961, for example, they didn't have a way to measure the wind speed. They looked at the sea surface to estimate the wind speed. And that's a very tricky thing to do. When you're looking at, if the sea is this agitated, the winds are 100 knots. There's some pretty big error bars associated with it. So Chris has gone back, and we've got all the surface wind estimates, and we're comparing them to the pressure-wind relationship. The pressure-wind relationship that we know now that accounts for the size and the eye and what all the typical hurricanes look like. And since we have all that data, we're trying to kind of combine what was in the previous best track with the modern techniques of analysis. There's some storms in 1960, for example, that showed Category 5, not too far off the coast of Louisiana. And some of the early looks at that suggest no, it wasn't that strong. Just the surface wind estimates seem to be off. It seems really rare to get, at the time it was thought to be Category 5. I think it was Ethel in 1960. The pressure was in the 970s, but they were estimating 140 knots at flight at surface winds. So they're saying some unrealistic things. We're trying to best capture what we think the storm was doing using the science we know now.
So have you actually gone back through Hurricane Audrey from 1957, Eric, which was a very memorable June storm?
We have. I don't think we made a whole lot of changes to Audrey. The 55 to 60 best track, the 56 to 60 best track should be released in the next couple of months.
Good. That's very exciting.
Yeah, that's. I don't think we made a whole lot of changes to Audrey. I don't remember off the top of my head, but we worked with Chris and kind of go back and forth on if there's any issues. We try to, kind of iterate back and forth, and we come up with what we think's the best track, and then put that into the Hurricane Center best tracks, and we usually release them in 5-year chunks. We should have the 56 through 60 period ready for release within a couple months.
But do you see any intensity changes for Audrey?
No, I don't remember Audrey off the top of my head. I don't recall it being significantly weaker or stronger. I think we're about in the right ballpark. There was an issue, maybe it was a little weaker than we thought at landfall, but I don't remember.
Well, is there any chance that you can actually go back and just maybe change one letter in the name so we could change it from Audrey to Aubrey, just in honor of our email officer here on the show?
Aubrey. Well, next time there's an A storm that need to be retired, well, just submit that.
There we go. That's the power of WeatherBrains. Thank you, Eric.
I'm always disappointed my name's not on the hurricane list.
Yeah, well, maybe
the
since you're
with a K, and that's just kind of lame.
Now, I know in some of the reanalysis process, you've looked at things like, the Great Manzanillo hurricane versus Hurricane Patricia in the Eastern Pacific, right? And that led to an important, thing that led to a record, I guess, with Patricia.
Yeah, that's right. We went back and looked at the Josh Morgerman and Andy Hagan and a few people went back and did an analysis of the 59 hurricane, and they came up with some pretty conclusive evidence that it probably wasn't a Category 5 at landfall. It was weaker, and all signs is that it was weaker than Patricia at landfall. Therefore, we downgraded the Manzanillo hurricane, and now Patricia is the strongest.
Hey, Eric, I have a question. Follow up on the drones. I had the privilege of being able to fly with the hurricane hunters during Hurricane Ivan back in 2004, and I know the kind of mission that they fly. What kind of mission do you see as being the standard mission for the drones to be doing, like we do with the hurricane hunters?
Right now, we've had a lot more success with drones outside of the inner core than inside. They've been really. It's a little nerve-wracking to pilot your. There's only one or two of them, so they haven't been too excited to go right through the eyeball of a major hurricane.
Right.
So there's definitely some pretty significant uncertainty there. I'm excited for the fact that I think we have the potential for better genesis and better track. I think we still have a ways to go to understand how to use the inner core data.
Okay.
We've been getting the radar data for the past several years from the P3s and trying to integrate that into the HWRF when we can.
Okay.
We haven't had that many opportunities over the last few years because most of the storms have been away from the United States.
Right.
But what we found is that radar data hasn't improved it as much as we might have guessed.
Oh, really?
And they're really trying to, the HWRF team is trying to figure out exactly why that is. But we have a ways to go in just basic science and data simulation of understanding how to get that inner core data to work in the H-work. That's a really tricky problem.
Well, follow up on the drones a little more. Are the drones, as they're flying, are they actually collecting data all the time, or do they just collect the data when they release a dropson?
I believe they're collecting the data all the time.
Okay.
But of course, it's only whatever flight level they're doing, usually fairly high.
Right.
A lot of that data isn't quite getting into the global models just yet. I think the European integrates some of it. They had some problems with the dropson technology. It's kind of an emerging thing, but
right.
I'd say within a decade, plus or minus a little bit. To me, it's exciting. It's an exciting way that we can really expand our data sources.
So perhaps then the drones are going to play a bigger role in trying to provide information on the surrounding environment more than maybe the inner core, the eye and the eye wall.
That's my personal opinion, what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
I'm sure, maybe there's some drone experts out there that are thinking, they're ready to try something different. But that's from what I've seen so far. That's what I've seen that can get us the biggest bang for the buck. I mean, I can really see the hurricane hunters working side by side with the drones. I mean, you can really cover a lot of territory there. And there's a great experiment a few years ago called Predict.
Right.
And it had the high altitude jet, and there were some modeling studies that showed the data with and without the dropsons, and it was pretty conclusive to me that those dropsons helped the global models forecast genesis better. And anything that forecasts genesis better will be useful for the Hurricane Center operations. And the faster you get a handle on what's happening with the environment of a hurricane, the better your forecasts are going to be. I think part of the problem we had such a difficulty with Joaquin last time is that the models had really a difficult time right in the beginning. There wasn't a lot of inner core type data. We didn't have the P3 available. There were no drones around. Joaquin was one of the bigger surprises I've had at the Hurricane Center since I've been there. That southwestward track, that thing was remarkable. I mean, you look at some of the airs there. I mean, we hadn't seen airs that large in 2 decades in some places.
Well, alrighty. Thank you. Appreciate that. I think drones are just a fascinating study. And I have to admit, after flying with the hurricane hunters and watching the meteorologists make observations of the sea surface, I don't know how they get any accurate data out of that at all, because I was looking down there and it's like, I don't know. I believe you they're 25 feet tall, but they sure look small.
Well, in that era, since Ivan, the step frequency microwave radiometer, the SFMR, has been a really useful tool at estimating the surface winds directly. It's got some calibration issues and there's some problem areas, but that's a lot better than sticking your finger out of the plane and taking a guess.
Yeah. Thanks.
So also, Eric, in that same sort of idea, you talked about a dynamic forecast cone a little bit earlier when you were talking about new products that you guys are working on. Talk about how that might work and how it might look.
Well, there's been some studies that shown that the model spread, the spread of the reliable guidance, has some predictive value it has some predictive value, and so we're able to add information other than just an average forecast error to make it larger or smaller. Also, we've gone back and looked at seeing initial intensity. It can be a good predictor to some of these things, and other researchers have found some predictors that we can use. The problem we've had is to find something objective and rigorous. We don't want to, keep flipping around small confidence, large confidence, small confidence, large confidence. We wanted to give the best possible science we could that kind of met our standards. We don't like to jerk forecasts left and right. We can't just go high forecast, low confidence, back and forth. And trying to find a happy medium there isn't the easiest thing.
And talk for a minute about the Madden-Julian oscillation and things like Kelvin waves and how important that is in the Genesis forecast that you guys do.
Well, by far our number one thing that we'll use is the global models, understanding how those global models forecast Genesis. But to me, in understanding what the Madden-Julian oscillation is doing, that really helps me understand, if I should shade my forecast probabilities a certain direction. Something that's really come on in the last decade is the convectively coupled Kelvin wave. Mike Ventrese's work, along with others, have shown that as one of those, and you can think of a Kelvin wave as being a smaller scale MJO, moving a lot faster and more equatorial confined. As one of those features zips through the area, you can really see the increase in convection and moisture. And it moves quite quickly, and his work really showed pretty clearly that for a couple of days after that wave passes, there's an enhanced chance of genesis. And these waves aren't well handled by the global models yet. The MJO is getting better and better because it's a much larger scale phenomena. Those Kelvin waves are often way too damped out in the global models. But the forecaster, to me, has a lot to add. I know that knowing where those convectively coupled Kelvin waves are in the Eastern Pacific have bailed me out many a Genesis forecasts because we know on average it takes, to go from 180 to roughly 60 takes roughly a week. And as that Kelvin wave passes, so many times I've seen explosions of convection that aren't well forecast by the models. Conversely, models, a day or two before those waves pass can often be not so favorable. So to me, it helps with the timing of the genesis as well. I think the best way we're going to get better and better at it for the models to handle those waves better. But I certainly make tweaks around it on the basis of that. Yeah, it's an exciting time to try to use those waves. I mean, I think 15 years ago, I didn't even know what that kind of wave was. And to see, you see equatorial waves move from the east, tropical waves. But the importance of those eastward moving waves that come from the Pacific is certainly growing. That's an emerging area of study.
And something that we always increasingly run into, especially now as we get into these storm surge forecasts and warnings and things like that, is the alphabet soup of all of these vertical datums. Talk about which ones are most important for the public to pay attention to when they're looking at forecasts and warnings and storm surge.
Ooh, storm surge 10:15 at night. Oh boy.
Oh goodness.
No, the only one you really have to know is inundation. Feet above the ground, that's the easiest one I've ever figured out. If it's going to be 3 feet tall, if 3 feet of inundation is coming, I know exactly what to expect there. If it's 6 feet, there's a big problem coming. You need to get out of there. I really encourage people to focus on the inundation forecast. The high-tech users can focus on, the mean high water, how high above that is. When I lived on Miami Beach, it was really important to know what the mean high water was and how far over that to expect how much water to get. But that's really a really technical way to look at it. Inundation to me is one of the better revolutions that Jamie and his team have come up with in quite some way, and really just understanding and explaining to the public, because the way it was done beforehand just wasn't very public friendly.
So how will the new watch and warning products work? Will they be like polygon type warnings, or how will they work as you understand it?
That's a really interesting question. They're not going to be polygons. They're just the area based. They're just drawing segments along the coasts and rivers. They're still working out all the processes, and that's why 2016 is still experimental with the warning. We're still working out the back and forth process with the storm surge unit at the Hurricane Center, with the WFOs, and with the hurricane specialists. We're trying to work out that process and getting out that warning as quickly as we can with the guidance. I mean, we've never issued one of these warnings, and in a sense, we need a practice storm. In another sense, we don't need a practice storm. But one of these days, we're going to get a practice storm, so we might as well be ready for it. And we're still working out exactly how it's going to work.
So is there a chance you'll use the NDFD grids to do that, or is that still too coarse of a resolution?
Well, they'll be in the GFE NDFD. That will be the format. You see in the Hurricane Center puts out its last month. It put out what it expects for 2016. They have some of the. I think it's still in the top news of the day at the National Hurricane Center website. They'll show some of the experimental warning products, and yeah, that is NDFD.
Awesome. So talk about some of the joint hurricane testbed projects you guys have got cooking up for us now, if they're not too top secret.
Oh, I don't think anything's top secret. Right now, we're still working at. There's two that I'm involved with. The first one is the Genesis probabilities. So everyone could see the global model fields and look at, okay, little low pressure areas. Is this a tropical cyclone? Is this not a tropical cyclone? Dan Halpern, Josh Kossis, and others at Florida State, Bob Hart, have gone back and looked at a longer term time series of these model forecasts and tried to use some predictors to predict the Genesis. What is the Genesis probability realistically on the basis of the model guidance? That project has been immensely helpful for me and others at the Hurricane Center. You know, if you have a low pressure area with several isobars around it at day 3, historically, what does this mean? It's different for the Canadian model, which likes to spin up everything, versus the UK Met model, which doesn't spin up as much, versus the GFS, which spins up things kind of randomly in different places. And understanding all those model tendencies is hard to integrate in your head. And now having objective guidance to me is one of the breakthroughs. I mean, it's something that's really helped get a lot of the hurricane specialists on generally the same page, and in the verifications of the forecast reliability has been very good. So we're working to get the operational European Genesis forecast probabilities in-house. We haven't had that just yet. And we're also working on rapid intensification probabilities for different time periods. I don't know if you've ever seen the bottom of the ship's message. There's all sorts of things to see there, but they'll put out the probabilities of rapid intensification over the next 24 hours for different thresholds, 25 knots, 30, 35, 40. Now we have different thresholds, and we've updated the methodology, and so now you can look at what's the probability of a 55 knot change over the next 2 days. So that should be operational for this hurricane season. That's part of the JHT stuff that we're doing. There's microwave projects. There's a lot of JHT work that's going on right now, and I'm excited to see the experiments go on during the season.
So now, Eric, I noticed that the National Weather Service Effective Messaging Workshop was just held at your facility. Was that just strictly for hurricanes or for messaging in general?
You know, I only attended part of the workshop. I think most of it was hurricanes. They specifically talked about how to message some of the tropical cyclone products, the probabilities, the storm surge, the map with the flooding areas. That was a part of the process. I'm pretty sure it was mostly tropical cyclones. I worked with explaining to the other National Weather Service forecasters how the Hurricane Center forecasters make their forecasts and the pitfalls and the guidance that we have. The way the national centers do things is a little different than the rest of the National Weather Service. So I think having the other Weather Service people sit in with the hurricane specialists is very useful, and I hope they took a lot out of that.
That's awesome. And the National Hurricane Conference was just recently held in Orlando, I understand. Any takeaways from that event that you that really spoke to you?
Well, one thing that I was really surprised about, I'm part of the social media team at the Hurricane Center. I was really surprised by how many of those sessions talked about social media. Mostly Twitter, but some Facebook. How people from all walks of life at that conference, from emergency managers to national emergency managers, to broadcast meteorologists. All of them were asking for more social media. I think it's become very important to their operations. And I was surprised, and I use social media a lot, but I was surprised to see other people, not just the weather weenies of the world, quite using it so heavily. And so, that's one of the challenges that that we have as the agency is keeping up with that demand while also balancing the other responsibilities that we have.
Hey, let me ask you this, Eric. So it's like the culture has changed now, and that used to be the Hurricane Center kind of worked in the background. Now you guys are like rock stars. I mean, you're one of the best Twitter guys to follow in the country. How do you handle that? How do you handle the time management of doing the science and working the shift and having handling all this, because you are in a different world now?
Yeah, it's to me it's kind of like we get a lot less phone calls than we used to get at the Hurricane Center. I think people get their media information differently. So for me, after the shift is over, spending 5, 10, 15 minutes on social media, trying to get out the important messages, to me it's very similar to giving the old phone interviews, or recording a message recording the old public advisory on a telephone. To me, it's very similar to that. The technology has changed. A lot of the stuff in my own personal stuff is on my own personal time, because I guess like a lot of meteorologists out there, I follow the tropical cyclones, especially if there's something interesting going on. And balancing all that is tricky. I mean, it's definitely difficult not to, you don't want to walk on people's toes, and and knowing what you know, and that other people don't know, but you want to keep it can be a little dicey at times. And I'm often worried that my son's going to pick up my phone and tweet a picture of a cat from a Hurricane Center account.
And let me tell you a little something about that. That would be the most retweeted, shared, engaging tweet you ever put out on that. Just so you know. So if you ever
there's a lot worse things that he could tweet. So
if you ever need to boost your numbers, just hand your phone over to your youngin and show him the cat.
But would you agree, Rick? That to me, the days of the 8-hour shift have kind of ended. It just never stops with this stuff,
Yeah, that's the trick. I mean, most of the stuff that the Twitter especially, it can be nonstop all the time. You'll see something interesting, and think of an interesting way to display it, and it'll be retweeted, and just a sharing of the information, and the work stuff. When I'm doing the work social media, we're trying to get more and more folks involved, but we've been kind of slow to catch up in some way. It's a difficult balance to strike, but we're kind of getting there.
Well, and I think we have two of the best in NOAA on this show right now, in Rick Smith. And Rick's a very soft-spoken guy, and he didn't like to talk about it, but Rick does an astounding job with his personal Twitter account and at the Weather Service in Norman. And you guys need to teach everybody else, because I don't think everybody's on board with this yet. They're certainly not in the television business, and I don't think everybody's on board with the Weather Service.
Well, I'll jump in.
Sometimes you can say tracking in a tweet, James. That's the limit. Sorry, Rick, I didn't mean to.
No. Tracking is important to throw that in there whenever possible. So, now, I always appreciate the compliments, but I got to tell you, there is a lot of Weather Service offices that are really picking up the pace when it comes to social media. It may not be 100%, but there's offices out there I see all the time. Fort Worth today, for example, with what they were doing with their hailstorm, and pick an office around the country. I mean, it's the level is rising pretty evenly across the Weather Service. I'm excited about what we're seeing, and it's not a fad. It's here to stay.
There's definitely offices that are leading the way. I always like to look and see what Boston is doing, and other offices, and Mobile, for instance, it does a lot of tropical tweets that I pay attention to, and just the way that people are sharing the information and having different ways to tell the public. It's to me, it's very 2016.
Yeah.
And let me ask one more question. We got to take a break about your relationship, and I'm talking the National Hurricane Center with local weather service offices. Eric, how would you describe that relationship? And I'm talking offices on the coast that you work with. Pretty good?
Yeah, they're really good. I mean, we don't always agree, but behind the scenes, we'll talk it out and we'll decide about the areas for the watches and warnings. We'll talk about the rainfall statement with the Weather Prediction Center. But overall, I think it's a great relationship. I think far and away the National Weather Service works very well within each office.
And I was just going to point this out. This is one of my pet peeves here, in that some of the local offices have broken away from the Storm Prediction Center, where you've got them using words like limited, elevated, significant, and extreme in different colors, where the SPC guys are using marginal, slight, enhanced, moderate, and high, and it leads to confusion. And I'm dealing with these questions, and I don't have time to deal with this. And again, I understand what both officers are doing, and they're great, but we got to standardize. You don't have that problem in the tropical world, do you?
We have that problem more than you'd think. I don't think it's as magnified. I mean, you have to remember, we haven't had a big hurricane in the social media age. I mean, Sandy, of course, was a very extreme system, but it didn't quite have the social media power that others. And Twitter has exploded since then. I mean, the last Category 3 or greater with massive hype and buildup would be Wilma, and Twitter wasn't around back then. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with those weather, ways of getting the weather when we get our, next big serious hurricane that threatens one of the big cities, especially. That's going to be a new frontier for us.
Well, everybody needs to go follow Eric on Twitter. We'll give his account here in just a little bit. We got to take a break. We're going to do Professor Peters and WeatherBrains 101. By the way, Brian had to leave. He said he's working the polls tomorrow. What kind of a lecture is on April 12th? It must be some
dog catcher for Helena.
Dog catcher. So anyway, we do have Professor Peters on tape here. We're going to come back with Tony Rice in the astronomy report. I'll give out a Tracky award since Kevin's not here. We'll do the weather roundup, the picks of the week. Eric is going to do his hurricane season outlook on this show right here. So don't go away as WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
The history of many things in meteorology is relatively short when compared with other things, such as the age of the Earth or the age of our solar system. Radar is one of those items in the meteorological enterprise which has really not been around very long. Radar technology began with experiments using radio waves in the laboratory of German physicist Heinrich Hertz in 1887. He uncovered the fact that these waves could be sent through many different materials, but the same waves were reflected by other materials. In 1900, a radio pioneer, Nikola Tesla, noticed that large objects could produce reflected radio waves that are strong enough to be detected. He knew that reflected radio waves were really radio echoes, so he predicted that these echoes could be used to find the position and course of ships at sea. Pulse radar was introduced in the United States in 1925, but just 10 years later, radar was patented under British patent law, partly as a result of the research led by Scottish physicist Sir Robert Alexander Watson-Watt. This patented radar later developed into the radar system that proved effective against German air raids on Britain during World War II in the years from 1939 to 1945. As a matter of fact, the first known use of the term radar was by the U.S. Navy and their scientists during that war. Advances in both military and civilian applications of radar continued through the 1900s. The very first comprehensive network of weather radars was established by the Weather Bureau beginning in 1957. Those radars were replaced in the late 80s and the first half of the 1990s with new models that incorporated the use of Doppler technology to not only detect the presence of water droplets, but to unlock the motion of those droplets through the application of Doppler principles. And just about 20 years later, the implementation of dual polarization techniques has continued to expand our ability to remotely sense the atmosphere around us. Research continues, and researchers are targeting their efforts at improving radar's range, the quality, imaging, and size, while at the same time reducing its cost. If you have a question about the weather, drop an email to question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
Back in 2008, the National Academy of Sciences established a program to connect entertainment industry professionals with scientists and engineers. The goal was to create engaging storylines with accurate science in film and TV programming. In short, the Science and Entertainment Exchange program helps Hollywood get the science right. But Hollywood has to come ask first, and they sometimes do. I participated in the exchange for about 3 years. Most recently, I was contacted by a screenwriter working on a story set in the future inside a spacecraft transporting passengers from one point to another in the solar system. To keep those passengers comfortable and the film's budget under control, the screenwriter plans to use artificial gravity. And this got us talking. Many films accomplish this using centrifugal force, spinning the ship or some portion of the ship, and many films get this wrong too. Gravity created by centrifugal force is a function of the radius to the center of the rotation, as well as that rotational rate. The 1998 oil drilling, planet-saving thriller Armageddon got it wrong spinning up a small Russian space station. The radius of that station's cylinder was just too small to produce any usable gravity. The rotational velocity would have had to have been too great to create anything close to 1g. That plus the Coriolis effect, that same force that impacts the wind direction here on Earth, would make astronauts nauseous, especially on such a short stay as depicted in the movie. If you do the math, though, there is a sweet spot between the radius and angular velocity measurements. A space station, or part of a space station, with a radius of just 200 meters, rotated at 2 meters per second, would produce centripetal acceleration, or artificial gravity, of about 0.9 Gs. Not only is that enough for a plausible movie, it's actually enough for astronauts to avoid most of those nasty effects that microgravity can have on the human body. So, if artificial gravity is on your list of required options for your next spacecraft, be sure to build it big enough to avoid that Coriolis effect when spinning it up to 1G. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey nonsense like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
Time for the weather roundup. This is on April 11th, 2016, and as we speak, I'm actually dealing with a little wake low on the back edge of a rain mass. Those are always fun to deal with. The strong winds have formed as the rain wraps up, and they're gusting to about 45 miles an hour in spots, and people are getting a little anxious, so I've been dealing with that during the show. But big soaking across the deep south. And, Rick, I guess you're the closest one to the severe weather. It looks like down to the south, some really nasty hailstorms today.
Yeah, we had some supercells, really just a couple of storms that developed along a boundary down just south of the Red River in far north Texas and moved across just a county north of the really densely populated part of the Metroplex, and had a tornado warning over in my county warning area as the storms are getting started. And I don't think we had a confirmed tornado there, but it sure tried. And we had a lot of severe weather yesterday too. We had quite a few storms, lots of hail reports, wind reports, and so yeah, it's been a busy couple of days in the south central part of the United States. And it looks like that continues. Looking at that graphic, all the way over into Mississippi, Alabama, and lots of people are getting in on the act.
Yeah, Dr. John, looks like you got a lightning display there, huh?
Yeah, that's what we're showing, James. And as Rick was saying, the most active lightning producers now are across the southern third of Mississippi and Alabama, just south of you, in fact. And this pattern that Rick's been talking about. Let me show you what the. I'm going to put this up if you're actually watching this. This is the 120-hour forecast out of the GFS, and boy, this pattern gets incredibly blocky by the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a closed low off the East Coast and a very slow-moving closed low over the desert Southwest. And Rick, this is coming towards you.
Yeah, I was just looking at that, and I'll pop one up here real quick and show. I don't know if you can see that, but it's the QPF from the Weather Prediction Center, and that's big numbers for parts of western Oklahoma. They desperately need it because the drought is creeping back in over parts of northern western Oklahoma, starting to increase over more of Oklahoma and Texas. So, we don't want all this at one time, but we'll take every drop of this that we can get.
Is that cold enough for snow along the Front Range of Colorado?
I don't know.
That's a lot of precip for the Front Range.
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not out of question.
That 500 millibar chart you showed me brought me back to my Colorado days.
Oh, right, yeah.
4 corners low.
That's right. Well, the GFS is showing
that is a total blocky pattern right there. That's just.
Yeah, this evolves out of a pattern that's more meridional, and this is pretty extraordinary. In fact, this is going to put a halt on any eastward progression.
No kidding. I mean, somebody, Rick might be out there having rain and storms for days.
Yay! We'll take the rain, but you gotta take the bad with the good.
Yeah, and where we are, we're kind of in the ridgy part of that, so we'll probably see some 80s down here. So that's kind of cool. All right, I'll tell you what. Before we talk about the picks, and I want to start with mine. I got to roll this because since Kevin's not here, I'll take care of it this week.
Now, WeatherBrains is tracking the tracker. We track what the consultants track, so you can track along with us. Does that make sense? Here's WeatherBrains lead tracker, Kevin Selly.
Well, since Kevin's not here, I'll be the guy that gives the track award. And I watch and understand as I talk about this stuff. This is not a knock on any local meteorologist. This is a knock on these bonehead consultants that come up with this idiotic stuff that TV stations have to do. And what's disturbing is that some stations have to say tracking every other sentence, and they have it all over their graphics. So I found this station tonight, and I like to watch other stations. I am not that good at what I do. I learn from watching others that are good. And so I watch, local coverage all over the country, and this was a station in Shreveport, and I couldn't help but notice. Do you see what it says on the back of the wall back there in their set? We track storms. So they've got it on the wall of the set, and then of course up in the graphic it's got Storm Tracker 12, and those two gentlemen said the word tracking about 18 times while I watched. So they get the Tracky Award, and Kevin Selly will be back next week. All right, let's do picks of the week. Again, Aubrey is out. We'll do emails, so I'll start with mine. So let's throw this open. And we have some astute scientists on the show. Brilliant men. So AccuWeather. And Brian was here. We fussed at this guy the last time he was on the show a few weeks ago for this 45-day forecast. Well, that's not good enough. So did you guys see what they introduced today?
Yeah.
90-day, baby.
90s.
So we're doing this show on April 11th. So now we've got a specific forecast for the 4th of July. So we can plan our picnics and our 4th of July little, fireworks shows here. So let me ask Dr. John Scala, an astute man of intelligence, academia. So is there any skill in a 90-day forecast?
In a 90-day? When I was teaching, I said that there's essentially nothing better than climatology after 14 days. So assessing skill at 90 days? Wow.
And remember our guest, and we're not here to drive people crazy, but sometimes we just have to. I mean, and he kept saying over and over again, we do it because people want to see it. People like it. Well, people would like a machine that makes the sun come out if they press a button. So it would be the same to me as selling this. Hey, here's a machine. It's a weather-making machine. You press a button and the sun comes out. It's the same thing. It just doesn't work. It's not happening. So how in the world can they get away with this? Is this ethical? I mean, come on. A lot of people thought it was an Onion story. See, nobody, and that's the thing. Everybody's afraid of these guys, and they don't want to, hurt their feelings or, whatever. But come on, there's no skill in a 45-day forecast, and there's certainly no skill in a 90-day forecast. And
how do you demonstrate skill?
And we kept asking the guy for verification. What are your verification statistics on days 30 through 45? And he never really had an answer. And all he said was, people want this. And so I guess before you know it, they're going to be doing a one-year forecast. They'll be forecasting 360 days in advance. So where does it stop? So,
I mean, at what point, it's like the lottery. I think for the vast majority of people don't enter the lottery. They don't buy a lottery ticket because they expect to win. They do it for the fantasy, for the 30 seconds or 5 minutes or 10 minutes of, oh, well, what would we do if? Where would we go? I'd quit my job, and it's an escape. It's like buying a movie ticket, right? So how different is that than a 90-day weather forecast when I've got an event that's 85 days out? It gives me something to check for 85 straight days to see what would I do if. Well, if you're AccuWeather, that's 85 days worth of somebody hitting your website that they weren't going to hit before. Before it was just 45, so now I've got you for 40 or 45 more days worth of hits on my website if I've got some event in the long term. And that's the thing, for those of us who've worked in TV, yes, the Farmer's Almanac there, James and Bill, you have and Dr. John as well, you guys have all gotten emails and phone calls. Well, my daughter's got an outdoor wedding in August, and it's sitting here the first or second week of April, right? And people expect us to have an answer, and the best we can give them is climatology. Around here, it's partly cloudy, hot, and humid with a chance of an afternoon shower or thunderstorm. And that forecast is as nonspecific as it is, usually is enough to satisfy them and go from there. But I'm starting to think that I sat in on a focus group that we did for our website, and this question we asked it just to see where it went, and people said, we know you're not that good. We get it. We just want something to sink our teeth into. I got a business trip 2 weeks out. I just want to have something to think about. And AccuWeather's filling the void. So, nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the market. And if somebody, as ethical or unethical, we can have that conversation within the weather community as much as we want. But the market says that there's a market for this, and the market's going to provide it. And it always comes back to caveat emptor, buyer beware.
All right. Well, I'm going to shut my mouth before I get in trouble. Let's put Eric on the spot. Let's just move on. Eric, tell me about the hurricane season. Go.
Give us a 6-month forecast now that we've finished trashing 90 days. Give us a forecast through the end of November, will you? Let's go.
Well, there's a difference between hurricane climate and picking a single day 90 days out, but I digress. No, I mean, looking at the pretty soon we're going to start to see some of the GCM forecasts for the hurricane season. And I've just seen some of the European stuff and otherwise. And the big question that I have this year is that we've seen year after year the tropical Atlantic has warmed up. Last year it ended up being one of the warmest years on record by the end of the hurricane season. And it was really quiet early on, and then boom, Joaquin kind of exploded at a high latitude and almost brought the hurricane season closer to average. This time with the conditions changing from El Nino to neutral or La Nina, you have to expect the Caribbean and the Gulf to have more activity than it's had the past couple of years. And it really only takes one. And we'll be watching it closely. I mean, the hurricane nerds, This isn't like a 2009 and 2010 where the tropical Atlantic was on fire by this time of the year, and systems started forming very early, and there were many, many hurricanes. Of course, most of the big hurricanes of 2010 stayed away from the United States. And so for the seasonal hurricane forecast, I know Phil Kotzbach and Gray are coming out on Thursday. It really only takes one for people out there, but the hurricane nerds, I'd probably more than 2013, 14, and 15. Well, what does that really mean? That's not a very particularly high bar to set, but we've got time, plenty of time to watch it.
What about the cold blob?
Yes, the cold blob. Yes, that term has got unbelievable
Godzilla, El Niños, and cold blobs.
Cold blobs and warm blobs, and the Atlantic isn't as warm as it was, and that's a big caveat to this hurricane season.
Hey, Eric, let me ask you this question, and this is an interesting question. Not that there's a right or a wrong answer. So you come out with a seasonal outlook, and at the end of May or the end of April, the 1st of May, who is that designed for? And for those people, how do they use that product?
Well, we've asked that question to ourselves. Specialized users are very interested in it. We've heard from people in the Gulf of Mexico and otherwise. To me, it has limited use for the public, or really even no use. There's an inherent curiosity of what the hurricane season will be. I think 40 years ago, people would be laughing at you if you tell you had any clue what the upcoming hurricane season was going to be. Now we have some idea what it's going to be. It kind of sets the tone to me. And we try to message it. It's either you really have to prepare every year regardless of the seasonal hurricane forecast. I try to make it an awareness and preparedness message rather than focusing on the exact numbers.
How successful is that, do you think? Because I've done that, and I've interviewed folks from the Hurricane Center who've done that or tried to do that. Do we think that that's actually successful, or do we think people are fixating on the numbers, or do you have any sense of that whatsoever?
I haven't heard too many people tell me, well, it's going to be a quiet year, I don't need to do anything. I think that's the exception other than the rule. I know we've gotten on social media and other things to really hammer it home. Last year with the quiet hurricane season forecast, we hit a message pretty hard that it really only takes one. 1992 is a classic example. Mm-hmm. One major hurricane that year, guess what? Category 5, right over Miami.
Was the biggie.
We just have to prepare every year. People are interested in what to see. It's not like we can hide it. Not like we say, oh, we have no idea, because that's, people have some interest in knowing, and hopefully most people, the vast majority, are able to, satisfy that curiosity and still prepare.
All right, fair enough. Well, this is let's shift over into the part of the program where we go around the digital mahogany table and get a weather-related pick of the week. And Eric, will ask one from you as well. Could be anything, website, book, movie, something you ran across yesterday, something you found in a toy store, whatever. And Bill Murray, we'll start with you on the far left, sir.
Yeah, Nate, I'm excited because the NWA's annual meeting is coming up September 10th through the 15th in Norfolk, and the registration went live today. So NWA members go and register for the annual meeting. It is a fantastic event. The agenda is coming into shape now. Mike Vescio and the program team there, Ken Carey, have put the tentative agenda together, and it'll be being shared over the next few weeks with those presenters that submitted abstracts. And make your plans now. I want to alert you. Make your plans now. This breaking news. Come on Friday, September 9th, because we will start early on Saturday morning with the second NWA Weatherfest, a public event. We hope to attract about 5,000 people down to the Nautica Science Center on the Norfolk waterfront. It's just 2 blocks from the headquarters hotel. And every NWA member has a role, whether that's a volunteer, an exhibitor, an activity or a game. or a scout mentor. This is going to be a really huge deal. So we'll be posting information by the end of the week to all the NWA membership. But please, before you make your hotel and travel plans, plan to come on Friday night, because there isn't golf this year, is what I understand. I don't know that that's official yet, but we will be going from 10 until 2 at the Nauticus Science Center in downtown Norfolk with a scout event from 7:30 until 12. So we expect over 5,000 people to show up for it, and it's a great opportunity for us to reach out to our audiences with games, educational activities, and just preparedness, safety information, new products, whatever you got. It'll be a great opportunity. We'll have a nice slate of 12 speakers. A couple of movies are going to be debuted during the event.
Ooh,
And,
do we have details? Do we have
really
any
exciting.
titles?
Blake Naftel, who's been on our show,
Yeah.
is going to screen his new storm chasing video, which will be out by then. And we're hoping to get the new National Geographic Extreme Weather movie in 3D, which would be really huge. There'll be several book signings, and it's just going to be a great, fun day. So everybody plan to get excited about that, and we'll start getting information out to the membership and getting all the logistics ironed out here over the next 30 days. And we'll keep you posted right here on WeatherBrains.
And if you've never been to a National Weather Association meeting, this will not, being on the East Coast, it's going to be fairly easy to get to. If you've never been to a National Weather Association meeting and you are listening to this show, you put up with this for 90 minutes a week, and you've never been to an NWA, you need to fix that this year. It is a fantastic organization. I'm not just saying that because I bought my way. I mean, got elected to NWA Council. But it really is a fantastic. I remember going to my first NWA in Fort Worth back in a long time ago, and I remember Kevin Lyman made me feel like I was the president of the organization from day one. I'm some kid. I'm turning morning weathercast in market 190 million, and he made me feel like $1 million. And that's the way the organization is from top to bottom. It's really one of the most welcoming, and that's not to say anything bad about anybody else. Every organization has its own culture, and there are goods and bads, but NWA is a great place. You don't have to be a PhD in double PhD in meteorology and math and climate science and everything else. The NWA is a very fantastic organization. You should definitely check it out. And it is very hobbyist and enthusiast welcoming. So you should definitely check it out. Come for as much as you can. The banquet on Wednesday is always a good time. And stay for the nights, because I got to tell you, the sessions are great, but it's the stuff that happens after hours that you remember.
The Greg Carbon drinking game.
Or maybe you don't remember. So anyway, it's a fantastic group of people, and I've never regretted a minute that I've spent at an NWA meeting or helping the organization out. Dr. John Scala, let's start that over. Pick
for you to say.
The week. This is Coke. I swear. This is Coke here. I'm not drinking
Well, that
anything
may
else.
be what's on the label.
Bourbon
What's on the inside, Well, Nate, my pick is consistent with what's happening this evening. These storms that we've been talking about across the Deep South are transitioning into a flash flood issue. So my pick is an article that appeared recently in Physics Today, and it's actually written by a grad student at Colorado State by the name of Eric Nielsen. And what he's talking about is the forecast challenges that develop when you have severe weather events that transition from, say, tornadic to flash flood.
Had more than a few of those in my days in Texas, and a few of those here in North Carolina too. And it's from a TV perspective, we get so bent out of shape about severe thunderstorm warnings and tornadoes and tracking that it's really easy to let those things transition into a flash flood event and be sort of behind the airplane from time to time. And that's never a good place to be.
It's the leading cause of death in Pennsylvania.
It is. Rick Smith, pick of the week, sir.
Before I do the pick of the week, I do have a fairly urgent LSR to relay here. This is a local
what
stork
kind of
report.
LSR are they? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Local stork report. Our friend Patrick Marsh, who's
friend of the show,
one of the unsung heroes at the Storm Prediction Center. A lot of the great things that you see on the web and behind the scenes, Patrick is the man that does that. He and his wife Sarah welcomed a new baby girl, their first child, into the world this evening. Hannah Elizabeth was born. So congratulations, Patrick and Sarah. And I hope they're all doing well over in Shawnee, Oklahoma tonight. My pick of the week
is just a good human being too. If you've ever had a chance to sit down and just talk with him one-on-one, he's just a fine human being as well as being a fantastic meteorologist.
He's a fantastic
really
scientist, a great person, and talk about NWA. He was one of the co-chairs for the Oklahoma City meeting this past year and did a phenomenal job. So congratulations to our friend Patrick. My pick of the week is I'm going to be, well, I was going to say lazy, but it's not lazy. It's resourceful. We actually had a good email that came into the WeatherBrains account talking about an event coming up in May, the Joplin Disaster Recovery Summit. And it looks very interesting. It's a full agenda, lots of breakout sessions, and it's not about tornado forecasting. It's not about severe weather per se, but it's about what happens after the storm. So it looks really good. There's going to be people there from Tuscaloosa, from Moore, from Joplin. So it's not just a Joplin event. It's everybody that's experienced a big tornado recently. So lots of good lessons to learn. I wish I could get up there, but May 19th and 20th, it's kind of hard to get away from here, but we'll see. But it looks good. So that'll be my pick of the week. They suggested that, and I took them up on it. So that's
all right. It looked like I actually skimmed over the agenda. It looked like it'd be a pretty good meeting.
Yeah.
So good luck with that, and hopefully there'll be some tweets and maybe a recorded live stream at some point down the road. My pick of the week is something we've been waiting for since about 1958. The National Weather Service is going to start issuing products in something other than all caps screaming, "Oh my gosh!" That's right, you heard me. Starting on May 11th, a couple of products, area forecast discussions, and a couple of other things will go from all caps to mixed case. They're gonna turn off the caps lock and actually type, and it's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. Other products to follow. Some things. International products, aviation, likely to stay all caps for a good long while, but some of the more public-facing products are going to go mixed case starting in a month. How 1985 of you guys? I mean, really, just good stuff. But we're excited about that. Weather Service going mixed case. The Hurricane Center, Eric, one of the first organizations to start doing that a couple of years ago. The entire enterprise did not collapse on itself with a mixed case. You guys did a good job. Tell us about your pick of the week as well.
Just the mixed case. We were lucky enough that we weren't on AWIPS 2 at the time, and the way that system was designed to be in all caps. So too much. But my pick of the week is the AMS Tropical Hurricane and Tropical Cyclone Conference coming up next week in Puerto Rico. Me and many of my colleagues will be there. The agenda's on the internet. I think it's a very interesting meeting. It's held every other year, and I'm really looking forward to it. We'll be down there on Sunday for the week, and if you've never gone, it's really high-class tropical weather workshop. And if you're looking for something a little less serious, you can always just follow my dog on Twitter.
Nice.
You might have seen he pops up every now and again.
That's a good-looking dog you got there. How old is he?
Hank's about 12.
I love old dogs. I had an old dog, and I miss her like the devil. But I tell you, good old dog, very cozy and loving. That's good stuff. Bill Murray, tell us about what's coming up in the future WeatherBrains calendar here. We've been doing, I think, a really great job of keeping the calendar full. What are we looking at for the next few weeks?
Well, let's just take a look at that real quick. We've got bookings all the way out through the month of June right now. We've got Martin Licious joining us next week.
Ooh, that'd be good.
Tessa, that's right. Greg Carbon will be along on April 25th. Tom Niziel from the Weather Channel on May 2nd. Eric Berger from Ars Technica on the 9th. Jeff Medlin from the National Weather Service in Mobile on the 23rd. We got an opening there on the 16th that we need to fill. Jason Samenow from the Capital Weather Gang on the 31st. We'll do a special Tuesday show instead of on Memorial Day. Steve Piltz on June 6th. Joe Whitty, famous meteorologist, on June 13th. Dr. James Fleming on the 20th. And then James Hawker will be joining us on Monday, June 27th. For a special show talking about OK First, joined by Andrea Melvin. So it's going to be a fun couple of months on WeatherBrains.
Yes, it is. Good stuff. And if you have any suggestions for guests, a lot of those actually are folks who people emailed us and said, hey, this guy or this gal would be great on WeatherBrains, and we send him over to Bill, and he puts his magic to work and manages to convince them to come on the show, and we all have a great time and benefit as a result. So,
and as long as we don't make the public affairs officer at the National Hurricane Center mad in the process, we do pretty good and get great guests like Eric. Eric, thank you for staying up late tonight.
Yeah. Speaking of, Eric, tell us how can folks get a hold of you? How can we follow you and Hank on Twitter?
Well, my handle is at Eric Blake 12, and Hank is, of course, at Miami Hankster. The official Hurricane Center, most of the official Hurricane Center is at NHC_Atlantic and Pacific. The Hurricane Center is actually the host of Twitter accounts for different purposes, but the weather nerds will enjoy the at Eric Blake 12 kind of stuff.
I'm checking out Hank's feed now. This is good stuff. He's living a pretty good life too.
Yeah.
A lot of pictures sprawled out on the couch and under the covers in the bed.
It was freezing the other morning. It was 61 degrees in Miami.
Oh my goodness.
Freezing.
A cold day in Miami.
Oh man.
Yeah, this winter was not much of a winter.
Had to get out a sweater on that day.
But for dogs, no, he's not too warm. Anything once it gets below 70, no thank you.
You Floridians, I gotta tell you.
Well,
all right, this is WeatherBrains. This is the weekly all about the weather netcast. We normally record it on Monday night starting at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central, 7:30 Mountain, 6:30 Pacific, 5:30 Alaska, 4:30 Hawaii, at some other time and other time zones. I need to figure out what the offset is for Estonia, so I can include Estonia in these little updates here. But we have a great time doing it, and you can check us all out. We've got all of our links to social profiles and everything else. Just go to weatherbrains.com. Email at weatherbrains.com, by the way, is how you get a hold of us to send questions, guest suggestions, that sort of thing. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, you can find we have video archives. You can find those on Google, on YouTube. And, of course, you can find all the podcast archive on the website and in iTunes and everything else. So until next week, I am not James Spann. For everybody here at WeatherBrains, good night. God bless.
Thank you so much for staying up late, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
It was a great show.
It was a fantastic show.
I hope it was good for you guys and the listeners.
That's
it
good
was
stuff.
fantastic. It was one of the best shows ever.
Give Hank a rub for us. He looks like a happy dog.
Oh man, he loves lap. He is the quintessential lap dog.
Awesome.
He will sit in your lap until you get up. You can sit there for 3 hours. He will not get up.
That's a good dog. Well, take care, Eric. Thanks again for being on with us.
All right, see y'all next week.
Y'all take care.
Bye.
Ooh, we're still here. Hey, we're going to turn this off. Thank you guys for watching tonight. Great show. Loved having Eric on the show with us. If you want to join us over on Song of the Night, come on over and follow my Twitter link here in just a minute, and we'll do that live. So we'll see you guys next week for WeatherBrains. Have a great week, and God bless. Bye-bye.